So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Nights of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm questioning whether Aardman could possibly be the best film studio out there. And I'm also talking about my Excitment For Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget, which I'm seeing at the end of this week. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but if you prefer to listen to your podcast, well, guess what? You're in luck, because you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Nights of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. In this podcast today, I'm talking about Aardman, and I'm talking about my excitement for Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget. So, I get to see Chicken Run 2 at the end of this week, and I'm ludicrously excited to see it, because I'm going to the BFI to watch it. I mean, I'm seeing other films at the BFI, but I'm also seeing Chicken Run 2. You know, that's the film I'm most excited for, I've got to admit. And I'm not going to London to see it. Like, I'm seeing it at the premiere, but I'm not seeing it at the premiere in London. I'm going to Birmingham to see it, where there's a screening which I think is being held simultaneously. So I'll get to watch at the same time the BFI, well, you know, at the same time it's screening at the premiere. And I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see this film, is what he said about 3-4 times in this podcast already. You know, I can't wait to see this film, because not only does the trailer look great, and not only is it a sequel to the first Chicken Run, which is such a brilliant film, it's coming from Aardman. And Aardman, at least for my money, never miss. They never really make a bad film. I'm sitting here thinking about all their films, and I'm questioning, have they ever made a bad film? I mean, I know some people might be sitting and watching this and going, oh, actually, Early Man wasn't a good film. I think Early Man is wonderful. And say what you will about Early Man. Love it, hate it, want to marry it, whatever. That film is original. And it's got such a unique conceit to it, such a unique premise, that I just can't help but go along with it. I mean, sure, that film has problems. It doesn't have the most memorable Aardman villain, but it's fun, and it's really enjoyable, and it has that Nick Park spark. You know, I just kind of came with that at the top of my head right now. Nick Park spark. Yeah, it has that Nick Park spark. And if you don't know who Nick Park is, by the way, he was a person who did the first Wallace and Gromit films. I mean, he's done all the Wallace and Gromit films. He's essentially the person who came up with Aardman. He is the person behind probably their most famous animations, and he directed Early Man, and I don't think it's his best work. I think his best work is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which I'll speak about a bit later in this podcast. But saying that, I think it's a remarkable, I don't know if it's remarkable actually, but I think it's a really enjoyable film that has that Aardman magic. Something I always admire about Aardman films is the way they are made, and the way they are crafted, and the way it all comes together, the way that the stop motion animation is done. And I've always admired stop motion animation over CGI animation, fully CGI animated films like, say, Toy Story, or like, say, off the top of my head, Flushed Away, which I'll speak about a bit later in this podcast, because that is another Aardman production. But fully CGI animated animation films, you know, they can be good. I'm not saying they're not. I love some. I think Shrek 2 is one of the best sequels of all time, and that's a fully animated film that was done on computers, at least as far as I'm aware. And the thing is though, the reason I prefer Aardman is because of the amount of craft and hard work which must go into making one of those films. Because I heard somewhere, and I think it is online, that Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit, the only full-length feature Wallace and Gromit film we've had so far, took 5 years to make. Because they're doing it with these plasticine models, and you've got to take what I'm presuming, this is how you do it, because it's how I've done stop motion animation films in the past. I've done a couple of very, very short stop motion animation films in the past, and I've even put them on this channel, I think. But yeah, you have to like take a photo, move it ever so slightly, take a photo, but then you also want to get the right shot though. You know, and it just must take so much time, especially with plasticine. I mean, I'm not very familiar with plasticine. I've toyed around with it in the past. And I'm not good with it. I am no good with plasticine. I remember once on one of my birthdays, I was given a Shaun the Sheep plasticine kit on how to make Shaun the Sheep, and I failed miserably. I think I just made a black and white splodge. You know, the colours of Shaun the Sheep. I think I put them together and ended up making a ball with them because I couldn't do it. I don't know how you make these models. The amount of detail and precision and care that's put into these films is incredible. It's remarkable. You know, I spoke about this when I was doing the Wes Anderson shorts last week. It's this meticulous filmmaking where the details are all there at the same time. Like, not only is there this incredible craftsmanship with the models that are being made and the animation that is being done for these films, whether it's the likes of Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, Pirates and an Adventurous Scientist, Aardman has already spoken about, and the Shaun the Sheep films, and there's another one which I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. Not only is there all this care and attention and detail and all that put into the animation, there's also detail put into the set design for these films. And like today, I was watching the Wallace and Gromit shorts before I did this podcast, and I'm doing the podcast quite late in the day right now. I'm recording this about 5:15. I was watching the Wallace and Gromit, some of the shorter Wallace and Gromit films like Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers, A Grand Day Out, A Matter of Loaf and Death, and A Close Shave. And when I was watching The Wrong Trousers, you get to the heist scene where Feathers McGraw, the penguin, the villain in that film, he's controlling Wallace. And when you get to the heist bit, the camera tracks along, and you see caveman penguins, and it's genius. It's so clever, that. And I love all the detail and the fact that you can feel that these films are made with a passion. You know, the fact that you can feel that so many people have put their lives and their blood and their sweat into these films to the point that you can quite literally see thumbprints and fingerprints on the models of the characters, especially if you watch some of the early Wallace and Gromit films. And I'm not saying that's a negative, by the way. That's actually who's positive for me, because I almost feel like I can touch these characters. It's tangible, I'm looking at these characters and I want them in my house. I want them here with me. And that's something that I can't say about other animations. I'm not criticising other animation studios. You get some incredible ones out there. Pixar have made some masterful films, and so has DreamWorks. And DreamWorks were partners with Aardman for a while. They're not anymore, but they were. I'm not criticising those films. I was about to say, I'm not criticising those films at all. But the reason I prefer Aardman, you can almost touch the characters, in these films, and you're watching them. It feels tangible, and I love that style of animation. It's one of the reasons that Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio from last year really surprised me, because of the stop motion animation that was used for that film. But that's another topic for another day. But going back on to Aardman, I also love their scripts, because their scripts are so on point and are so funny, and at the same time they're exciting and they're emotional at times, and quite moving, particularly with the Wallace and Gromit films, and Chicken Run as well. I remember being quite moved by that, and I just love their films so much. You just look at their filmography. You start off with the Wallace and Gromit films. You start with A Grand Day Out. Sure, it's silly, and you have to suspend disbelief. But you don't watch a film like that for accuracy, for logic. It's an animation. The point of animation is just meant to show you something you can't do in live action. At least that's what I take from it. And I was watching A Grand Day Out earlier, and I haven't seen that film in what feels like 10 years. In actuality, it may be a bit shorter than that, but it feels like 10 years. I haven't seen that film in a long time, and I was writing something. I was actually planning this podcast today. I was putting my notes down, and then I shut my computer about 5 minutes in. I was like, no, I just want to be watching this. I just want to be watching this film because it's so delightful, and it's catching me, and it's captivating in a way that Aardman only really can do. And then I watched A Close Shave, and I couldn't believe how much fun I was having with it. And then I watched The Wrong Trousers, and I still today think The Wrong Trousers is the best thing Aardman has ever done. I think they've had some other perfect films, don't be wrong, I think they've had some perfect feature-length films, but I still think that Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers is perhaps the best thing Aardman has ever done. And then you get A Matter of Loaf, then you get A Matter of Loaf and Death, which I know some people weren't big on, but that film's great, it's really fun, and it has that energy and that pace that I love so much from Wallace and Gromit and The Curse of the Were Rabbit, the only Wallace and Gromit full-length feature we've had so far, and I think that's a perfect film. I think there is a strong argument that I would make that Wallace and Gromit and The Curse of the Were Rabbit is a perfect film, because when you think about it, can you really think of anything wrong with it? I know I can't. And so that's just Wallace and Gromit. Let's go on to Chicken Run. Chicken Run was their first full-length feature film, for the studio as a whole. And I'm pretty sure it got nominated for an Academy Award. I don't think it won. I think Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in the year it came out. I want to say 2006. I think that's when that film came out. But Chicken Run, I'm pretty sure, got nominated. And you hear about the stories that went into making that film, the amount of pressure that Aardman and DreamWorks were on with that film, and when you watch it, it's just a complete joy. It's brilliant, and it's The Great Escape meets Flight of the Phoenix. The first half of the film is The Great Escape with chickens in a chicken farm, and then the last third of the film turns into Flight of the Phoenix, and it's perfect. And you have the villain of Mrs. Tweedy, voiced by Miranda Richardson, who's returning in Chicken Run 2, which I'm very excited about. You have her in that film, who is terrifying. One thing I haven't really spoken about yet is Aardman does horror really well. What they do so great for family adventure films is you add in these elements of horror, which I think you need for family films to really be great, to really feel any sort of threat when you're watching an animation. I remember watching Wrong Trousers when I was a kid and being really scared for Wallace during the heist scene. And I remember watching parts of Curse of the Were Rabbit when I was a kid and being quite terrified, even though now when I watch the film, it's not really scary when you think about what's actually going on. You've just got a huge rabbit eating vegetables, but it's shot and it's filmed and it's all captured in such a way from the filmmakers behind Curse of the Were Rabbit that it looks like a Hammer horror film from the 70s. It's shot in that sort of way. I mean, was Hammer horror in the 70s? I'm not entirely sure. But you get the point of making. It looks like a horror film. Clearly, Nick Park is a horror fan. He's a fan of the horror genre, and you can really see that in Curse of the Were Rabbit, which is, when you think about it, a comedy horror film, and you can also see it in The Wrong Trousers and A Close Shave. Yeah, you definitely can. There are certain moments which I even find a little unsettling now when I'm watching Wallace and Gromit, and you get that in Chicken Run, and I think Chicken Run is such a good film. I rewatched that a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot how good it was, and how entertaining, and how great the characters are, and even so we have new voice actors for Chicken Run 2, which I will speak about a bit later when I talk about my excitement for Chicken Run 2. Even so we have new voice actors for the new one, I don't know if it's going to bother me too much, because I loved watching it. I don't want to go back and see what these chickens have been up to however many years later the sequel's meant to be set after the first one. And then you get The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists, which came out, I want to say, in 2011. I think it came out in 2011. I'm not entirely sure. And that film has Hugh Grant voicing the what's it called? I've got him down here. I was trying to wing it just then. You have Hugh Grant voicing the pirate captain, and you have David Tennant, who's one of my favourite actors working today. Can't wait to see him back as a Doctor. We're going to see him back in like a month or so. We have David Tennant voicing Charles Darwin. The idea for the Pirates and an Adventure with Scientists sounds like it shouldn't work at all. It sounds terrible on paper. And yet, much like Chicken Run and much like Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it's a complete wonder. You're watching it and you're just smiling from ear to ear. And I love the fact that it was very different as well from Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit. That's something I've always admired from Aardman. The fact that they always do these different films. They never really stick the same idea. I mean, yes, Wallace and Gromit, and yes, there's a Chicken Run sequel coming out soon, which I'm very excited for. And yes, we've had 2 Shaun the Sheep movies, but we've also had these other very different films thrown in there, like The Pirates and Adventure Scientists, like Aardman, and some of their non-stop motion animation films as well, where they've always come up with these new and unique ideas, something which other animated studios haven't always been the best at. Lightyear, anyone? Anyone remember Lightyear? But anyway, The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists is just... oh, it's so good. I forgot how good that film was. And yeah, it's a really wonderful film. And hearing that voice cast as well, it just works so well. And you just forget how well these films hold up. I remember watching that when I was really young. And I thought when I went to rewatch it a couple weeks back, I was going to dislike it. And I ended up just, again, smiling from ear to ear, which is something that happens to me a lot with these Aardman animations. And you get to the Shaun the Sheep movies, which... I know they're not aimed at my demographic. I can understand that. But at the same time, I rewatched the first Shaun the Sheep film yesterday, because I remember the second quite well, and I remember really enjoying that in the cinema. And I rewatched the first Shaun the Sheep movie, which I hadn't seen in about, again, feels like 10, 11, 12 years maybe. I hadn't seen it in a long while. And I rewatched it. And that film also... hit me in the heart, it got me in the feels. It's heartfelt, and it's got some really... I must admit, there was one moment in the film when I was rewatching the Shaun the Sheep movie, and bear in mind, again, I'm not the target audience for the film, at least I don't think I am. You decide, hey? Anyway, yeah, I was watching the film, and I was getting close to being a bit teary-eyed, which doesn't usually happen with me in a film, ever. I don't really cry at films. I'm not trying to sound manly there. It's the truth. I don't cry. I'm not trying to sound manly there. It's just the truth. I don't cry at films that much. And yet, I was getting very emotional in Shaun the Sheep, the movie, which I didn't expect. And that film, constantly moving, and, I can see a kid like 5 or 4, 3 years old watching that and just absolutely adoring it. I mean, yeah, it's silly and it's over the top and it's far-fetched, but honestly, who cares? That film is so delightful. No, the words I keep coming back to, wonderful, delightful, wondrous, and all that jazz. I keep coming back to those words because that's what Aardman ignites for me, and I've already spoken about how I actually really enjoy Aardman. I don't care what anyone says. I think Aardman is a very fun film. I think it's a very fun film, and all these Aardman films, yes, even the newer ones, make me feel warm when I watch them. There's a sense of warmth that you get with an Aardman film that you don't necessarily get with, that I don't necessarily get with other animation films. And, it's just one of the reasons that I think they might be the best. Actually, it is the main reason why I think they are the best animated studio working today, and maybe even the best film studio, which I'll get onto shortly. Now, I've spoken about the Aardman Features, which have, stop motion animation. I've spoken about them. But I haven't spoken about the fully CGI Aardman Features, which you have Flushed Away and Arthur Christmas. Let's talk about Arthur Christmas first. I didn't even realise After Christmas was an Aardman film. I don't think of it as an Aardman film. I'm not saying it's, it falls into their category, but it doesn't have that same look that Aardman films do, where each character sort of looks like Wallace out of Wallace and Gromit. You don't even get that in Flushed Away, which I'll speak about shortly. In After Christmas, which is a really enjoyable film, the characters don't look like Aardman characters at all. And it also feels a bit commercial. And I mean, After Christmas is a film I watch every Christmas. I stick it on when I'm putting the Christmas tree. Really fun and enjoyable film. But I don't know. I don't class it as an Aardman film. That's not the way I see it personally. And yeah, I enjoy After Christmas. I'm not saying it's a bad film. And it just shows you again that even Aardman films that I didn't realise were Aardman still work really well. But I don't know. Yeah, that one's a bit of an anomaly to me. I'd have to look into how that really works. I did look up how is After Christmas an Aardman film, and it didn't really give me an answer online. So anyway, apparently it is. But I just don't think of it as one. Flushed Away, I do think is an Aardman film, though. But the thing is with Flushed Away, it is fully CGI animated. It's a fully CGI animated film. It's not stop motion animation, because apparently Aardman was under pressure with that film from DreamWorks to make something really quickly after Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I might be mistaken there, but I heard from somebody that they were under pressure to make this film, and they didn't use stop motion animation because a lot of the film takes place around water. It takes place in the sewers, and so it would be quite difficult to do stop motion animation, with water. I mean, some of the Wallace and Gromit films have used a bit of water. I think Chicken Run might use a bit of water at one point, but they don't use water that much in those films. And Flushed Away, the environment of Flushed Away is a lot of water. So I understand why they didn't use the stop motion animation. I understand that. But I do think that took away a bit for me with that film. Because I was watching that going, I think I'd like it so much more if it was stop motion animation. Because the film's enjoyable. It's got Hugh Jackman voicing the main rat. It's got Kate Winslet voicing the main female rat. And those two, their chemistry that you get through the voice acting works really well, which you don't always get in voice acting. It works really well in Flushed Away. You also have a great, supporting voice cast of the likes of Bill Nighy, Andy Serkis, Sir Ian McKellen. The voice cast is great, and it's really enjoyable to watch. It's a fun film, again, much like many other Aardman films. But it just doesn't have the same Aardman touch for me, because it's not stop motion animation. And for that reason, you get some over-the-top action sequences. Because with stop-motion animation, you have to tone down the action sequences a bit because you can't make them too bombastic because it's going to take too much time to make. And also, you have this over-the-top plot about they want to get this, they want to get this jewel or something. The plot was just a bit, it was over the top and it didn't need to be. And it was convoluted at times. The story felt convoluted, and it was also it felt a bit like they were throwing spaghetti at the wall with that one. And it didn't feel like Aardman, at least when I was watching it, had their full heart into that film. It felt like they were making it because DreamWorks wanted that film quickly, from what I've heard. And so, yeah, I don't mind Flushed Away, and Flushed Away is actually directed by the same person who has directed Chicken Run 2, and I think he will do a better job as the director, Sam Fell. I think he will do a better job with Chicken Run 2, Dawn of the Nugget, because that film is going to be stop motion animation, and he will have to tone down some of those way over the top action sequences. Well, fingers crossed he does anyway. And I don't mind Flushed Away. I don't think it's a bad film. I enjoyed it, but just didn't have that same touch for me. I mean, it did have some of that detail in there. Like, there's one scene in the film where the main rat that we follow, voiced by Hugh Jackman, is deciding what to wear in the morning, and he comes across Wallace's outfit from Wallace and Gromit, and I like that little detail. But again, this would have been better for me, personally, if it was stop motion animation, because I just loved that. As I've already spoken about, that's one of the reasons I think that Aardman succeeds over all these other animation studios, and it's one of the reasons I think that Aardman might be the best animated studio, because I've already spoken about even the worst Aardman film, which in my opinion is flushed away. Even the worst Aardman film is still pretty enjoyable. And this is an add-on. One thing I forgot to mention when I was actually recording this podcast is this. I think Aardman make perfect family adventure films. Something which I don't always think other animated shows do the best. Like, even so I might enjoy a Pixar film, I don't know if someone older than me would. For instance, when I watched Onward, I felt that way. Yet, I can see people older than me and, parents watching a film like, say, Chicken Run or Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were Rabbit. I can see parents and families, sitting down with their kids and whatnot, watching an Aardman film and everybody getting something out of it. Particularly the way Aardman evokes cinema from the past. So, like what he's spoken about, Chicken Run is Flight the Phoenix meets The Great Escape, and Curse of the Were Rabbit evokes a bit of King Kong, and films such as that. I love how these films are perfect family adventure films, which I can imagine a family sitting around and watching, and each one of the family members getting something out of. Anyway, back to the podcast. And that's not something you can say for any other film studio, period. Not even any other film animation studio. You can't say that about Pixar, because Pixar's worst film, in my opinion, is Lightyear, and it's dull at times, and I don't like using this phrase, but it's boring, and Illumination, which is the people, the team, the studio behind the Despicable Me films, most recently the Super Mario Bros. Films, also made the sequel Life of Pets films, which I haven't seen. But the thing is about Illumination, they make some fun films. I actually really enjoyed Minions 2: The Rise of Gru, probably more than I should have. And I really enjoyed the Super Mario Bros. Film. I really enjoyed that, and I wasn't sure what I was going to. But the films also feel rushed. They feel at times that they've been rushed to get out, and the scripts aren't as sharp as they could be, which is something you can't say about Aardman. Sony Pictures Animation have had some really great films, like the Spider-Verse films, but they've also had some pants ones. You can go on and on with these animated studios, and you can go on these film studios. I mean, personally, I've liked almost everything Lucasfilm has put out as a film studio. But I can also understand why some people wouldn't. And they haven't had hit after hit after hit. Solo: A Star Wars Story was a bomb. It was a bomb at the box office. And so even though I might say Lucasfilm is up there as one of the best film studios today, maybe that's me just being biased because they're the people behind Indiana Jones and Star Wars. And Paramount have had some stinkers. So is Disney. So is Disney Animation. That's not Pixar. They've had some stinkers. Sony's had some stinkers. You could just go on and on and on with these big film studios. Even the British film studios like Film 4 or Studio Canal. I don't know if that's actually a British studio. But you understand the point I'm making. You could go on and on with these films. And you could point and go, actually, yeah, they've had some masterpieces. Don't get me wrong. They definitely have. But they've also had some stinkers. And I don't think Aardman ever has. You get the point I'm making. I don't think Aardman has ever really made a bad film. And I just love watching them. I love all, things I've been spoken about. One of my favourite villains in movie history is Feathers McGraw, which is on my t-shirt right now for podcast listeners. One of my favourite villains is Feathers McGraw, the penguin from Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers. Because what's the tagline for his character that I heard? He's 90% penguin, 10% chicken, and 100% bad. I love that. And, people think there's the scene in Wrong Trousers, where it looks like he's a chicken. I love all these little details, and I love the fact that he's a villain which never talks. He never says a line because he's a penguin. And yet the villain is so good. And I remember when I was a kid, I found him so menacing, and I still think he's a genius villain today. Probably the best villain Aardman's come up with. And I love the villain in Shaun the Sheep movie. I love how terrifying he actually is. He's somebody who wants to capture these animals and lock them up for good. And even so he doesn't actually say any words and he's a human person, you're watching him, and I was a bit scared of him. I wanted him to die, as soon as the film was going on. And Curse of the Were Rabbit is genius, because you think the villain Curse of the Were Rabbit is going to be this big scary were rabbit like King Kong, which the film evokes, in the later stages, and then the were rabbit turns out to be the main character. It turns out to be Wallace. That twist is one of the best twists in cinema history that people don't talk about enough. And Victor, voiced by Ray Fiennes in Curse of the Were-Rabbit, is a great villain. You're Totty! And you have Helen Bonham Carter voicing Lady Tottingham in that film. The voice cast for that film is great. And, you have the the cyborg dog in a close shave, who's also great. And I love how that film introduces Shaun the Sheep, and then you get off Wallace and Gromit. You go to Chicken Run, as already spoken about. Mrs. Tweedy, one of the best villains ever. The Pirates and Adventurous Scientists, the villain is Queen Victoria, voiced by Imelda Staunton, who also does the voice of one of the chickens in Chicken Run. Such a good villain. Just the way Imelda Voisin, God, I read my head out right now. The way Imelda Staunton voices her it's great. And I could just go on and on and on. I mean, I must admit, I don't think the villain is great in Aardman, and it's voiced by Tom Hiddleston in that film. Loki, if you don't already know. If you don't know him by name. I don't think the villain is great in Aardman, but I still find that film wildly entertaining. And yeah, I think Aardman may have possibly come up with the best villains in cinematic history. I just love them. I love an Aardman film. Whenever it's coming out, it's an event film for me. And I understand why it might not be for some people. Aardman is, to a acquired taste, is to a certain taste. I can imagine somebody watching an Aardman film, particularly maybe one of their early films, like, I don't know, Chicken Run, one of the early Wallace and Gromit films, like A Grand Day Out, or Long Trials, which, by the way, I adore. Saying that, I can see somebody watching one of those films and going, they haven't aged too well. I can see the thumbprints and the fingerprints on these characters, and it's taking me out of the film. And I can see why the way Aardman do stop motion animation won't be for some people. And the films, particularly their early films, are very British. They have that British sense of humour, and they all talk. A lot of the characters, again, particularly in the early films like Chicken Run, speak in British slang, something which audiences outside of the UK might not fully get. But I live in the UK, so I don't care. And I love these films. I love how funny they are, I love how sharp the scripts are, and I also love the TV shows, by the way. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, I love Creature Comforts, and I remember growing up and watching the Shaun the Sheep TV show a lot on CBBC, and really, really enjoying that. And apparently they had a spin-off, the Shaun the Sheep show, which focused on the small sheep, the baby sheep in that show, which was Timmy, if I remember correctly. The funny thing is, the Shaun the Sheep show was a spin-off from Wallace and Gromit, A Close Shave. So what you got there is a spin-off to a spin-off, and I had so many fond memories of watching the Shaun the Sheep show with the dog and Shaun are kind of frenemies. You've got the pigs, which Shaun always hates. You got all of Shaun's sheep, which he used in how smart Shaun was, and the heart of those stories, the heart of the Shaun the Sheep show was always Timmy, and I love the Shaun the Sheep show when I think about it. Whenever I look back on that show, I always think of it very fondly, and when I rewatched the movie, it brought back a lot of those memories. I love the Shaun the Sheep show, and I love all these movies, and that's why I'm so excited to see Chicken Run 2. Chicken Run 2, Dawn of the Nugget. How about that name? Don't really understand how it. I mean, maybe they're going to be made into chicken nuggets. Maybe that's a threat in this one. Because in the first Chicken Run, the threat was that if these chickens stayed on this chicken farm, they were going to be made into chicken pies. And this time around, maybe they're going to be made into chicken nuggets. I don't know. But I'm excited to see it. I'm very excited to see it. Am I a little worried? Sure, I'm a little worried that the new voice cast, are going to take me out of it a little bit. Am I worried that the film looks like it's advanced quite a lot in time, and yet from what I've heard, the film takes place, in the setting of the actual film, it takes place a couple of years after the first Chicken Run. Am I worried that the film is only going straight to Netflix and not having a theatrical release, so it can't compete for the Academy Awards, and the first film won an Academy Award, so I'm not sure why they're doing that? Am I worried about all of that? Sure. But I'm still excited to see it. I'm still excited to see it because it's Aardman. And I know I've been going on about them, but God, I love the films. I love their films. And I can't wait to see what they've been cooking up with this new Chicken Run film. And I get to see it this Friday in a cinema. Get to see it in a cinema. That was something I didn't think I was going to do, because when I spoke about Chicken Run 2 on this channel with Lewis a couple of weeks back, and by the way, go and check out that podcast if you haven't already. When I spoke about Chicken Run 2 in that podcast and questioned whether it could be one of the best films of the year, and by the way, I still think it could be. I think there's a good chance because it's Aardman, and if I was around in 2006 and doing these reviews in 2006 when Curse of the Were-Rabbit came out, I would have said that was one of the films of that year. And the same with Chicken Run if I was doing reviews back then, and maybe even the same with The Pirates and Adventurous Scientists. So you get the point. I do think this can end up being one of the best films of the year. And, saying all that, I said in that podcast that I did with Lewis on Chicken Run 2, I said, I really wish I got to see it in a cinema. I get to see it in the cinema now. And I probably get to see it in a cinema full of people. Completely full of people, which is one of the things that excites me the most. The fact that I'm going to be watching an Aardman film in a cinema full of all these people which hopefully want to be there, and hopefully all react to the film, laughing along with it, maybe getting a bit emotional if the film has a good emotional through line. And I get to see it 2 months before it properly comes out as well. I mean, the film releases worldwide on Netflix. As I've already said, it's not going to theatrical release, which is unfortunate. I mean, maybe it does if the film gets immense popularity and it gets, rave reviews. Maybe it gets theatrical release, although I wouldn't hold my breath. I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't hold my breath, which is a bit unfortunate because, again, Aardman doesn't appeal to everyone. I love them to pieces. I've got an Aardman t-shirt on right now, but they don't appeal to everyone. And so it's unfortunate that it's not getting theatrical release, but not to toot my horn once again, but I'm going to do it anyway. I get to see it in a cinema. Yes! I can't wait to see it in a cinema. I can't wait to see these characters back and watch a Chicken Run film in the cinema. That is something I never thought I would ever do. And so, yeah, I love Aardman. Love them to pieces. And my top 3 Aardman films, my top 3 full-length feature Aardman films, so not counting the Wallace Gromit shorts like Wrong Trousers, Matter of Love and Death, and, Grand Day Out and Close Shave, not counting those, and not counting the Shaun the Sheep TV show, my top 3 Aardman full-length feature films are Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. That's number 1. I think that is a perfect film. Number 2 is Chicken Run. And number 3 for me is The Pirates and Adventurous Scientists. And so, yeah, they're my ranking of the top 3 Aardman films. Just wanted to throw that in there. And I just love how they always bring magic to their films. And there's this Aardman magic which you only really get when you watch one of those films, particularly when it's stop motion animation. I don't think you get that so much in Flushed Away. And I love how they use comedy, and I also really love the musical score for those. I really love the musical scores for Aardman films. Not just the Wallace and Gromit scores, which are written by Julian Knott, who does such a great job with the scores for those films. His music for the train chase sequence in The Wrong Trousers is genius, and his music for Curse of the Were-Rabbit is brilliant. But I also love Hy Gregson and John Powell's score for Chicken Run. I think that's a very good score. And I love Theodore Shapiro's score for The Pirates and Adventurous Scientists. And I love Hy Gregson's score for Early Man. I love all these scores for the Aardman films. Because, yeah, they're a bit over the top, but I think they elevate the film. And, whenever I listen to a piece of music from a Wallace and Gromit film now, it just makes me smile. Because those, Aardman films make me feel warmth as well. There's just warmth that comes up with an Aardman film. And, yeah, I mean, as I've already spoken about, I love these films. Even the worst Aardman film, which in my opinion is Flushed Away, I still think is enjoyable. And I can't wait to see Chicken Run 2, Dawn of the Nugget, at the end of this week. Because I just think it's going to deliver. I think it's going to be so good. And yeah, I do think there is an argument, there is a good argument that I would make that Aardman is the best film studio working out there today, or maybe the best film studio ever. I know they've only made 8 films. I know they've only made 8 films, but none of them have been misses. At least not for my money. So yeah. Can't wait to see Chicken Run 2, Dawn of the Nugget, end of the week, because it's going to be from Aardman, and I love all of Aardman films. I love all they've done. Short films, full-length features, and even the TV shows. I love them all, or at least enjoy them all. So yeah, can't wait to see Chicken Run 2, Dawn of the Nugget, this Friday. Anyway guys, that is it for the podcast for today. Sorry about the lighting if you watched on YouTube. I'm recording this quite late in the day right now because we've had people working in our bathroom right now, so I've been able to record this in the day when I was planning to, but still nonetheless, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and if you've seen any Aardman film, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you think, what your favourite Aardman film is. Maybe you're not a fan of the studio, and if you're not, please let me know why in the comment section below, or maybe you think a film studio is even better than Aardman. If you do, I'll fight you on that. No, but please let me know your thoughts on what I've said in this podcast today, and look forward to my... I think I might do one. I think I might do an out of the theatre reaction to Chicken Run 2 later this week. So look forward to that later this week. Look forward to my review of Chicken Run 2 coming sometime within the next couple of days. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And as always, thank you for watching. And yeah, I suppose this is it. Not gonna lie, I'm a bit frazzled right now, so I don't know how this podcast has turned out, but thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.